Hey, it's Kley. Welcome to another video. Today, I want to take a look at this guitar. This is a PRS S2 22 standard. I want to give you my full thoughts, review, opinion. I've had this guitar and been playing it kind of as my primary electric guitar for the last several months now, and I feel like I'm in a position to kind of give it my full thoughts. So if you're interested in that, let's go ahead and dive in. Alright, now for context, I've owned this guitar for many months now. I've been playing it primarily as my live guitar for gigging. I've also been playing it quite a bit here at home just for general practice and also for a lot of recording sessions that I've been running, and have found it to be just fantastic overall. But I also wanted to give some more detailed thoughts and kind of summarize everything and put it all together in case you're interested in buying an S2. Now, I also want to kind of give you my history with PRS. I've owned several different PRS-I throughout my years. That specifically includes an old CE24, a McCarty Standard, a narrow field, and also I bought a PRS SE Tremonti. And I've got videos on all those back in the archives of my channel. So I've kind of have a variety of different PRS models that I have owned and played, so kind of can compare and contrast with the different models within PRS's own line. So first and foremost, let's talk about tone. I think that's probably maybe the most important thing that I look for in an electric guitar. This guitar, I think, has really surprised and impressed me. In my opinion, pickups are really one of the most important elements that contribute to an electric guitar's tone. And in the past, I wouldn't always have said that PRS makes the best pickups in the world. Even though they make great playing guitars, great looking guitars, their pickups maybe in the past were a little bit substandard. And I think they've really come a long ways and improved the quality of their pickup design in more recent years. And I think these S2 models, even though S2 is a little bit more, supposed to be a little more budget focused, even though it's made in the United States, a little more budget focus, I think the tonality of these pickups is excellent, and I've really been encouraged by PRS's the strides that they've made in improving the quality of their pickups. Now, to that end, I've never really felt any desire to actually remove or replace these pickups with any others, which is kind of saying a lot because I really like to tinker with my guitars, and I've put different sets of pickups in a lot of different kinds. You know, my number one Stratocaster has Lindy Fralin pickups, and I'm a real believer that an excellent set of pickups can make a guitar sound really fantastic, even if it's a pretty budget-oriented model. So the fact that I've never really wanted to change these, I think, says a lot to how good they sound. I would kind of classify them as a little bit more of a moderate PAF style. They're not the most vintagey, low output, super clean, clear articulation, but they're also not, maybe in the past, I think some PRS pickups have been kind of more modern, higher output, kind of with that more like cutting mid-range modern feel, maybe even more of like kind of a scoop sound. I don't think these pickups fall into that world at all. They have a lot of clarity and definition and still sound really good, but they're definitely more on the PAF side, where they definitely have, a little more of a low to moderate output. And so for me and my preferences, they are excellent, and they cover a really wide range of tones. I think they sound really good clean, all the way to more mid-gain bluesier stuff, all the way up to full-on saturated lead tones. I think they sound fantastic, and really have a lot of great tones in them. So first, let's talk about the bridge pickup. Now, I'm going to give you some tone examples here. I'm plugged into a Marshall Plexi, and I think the bridge pickup actually is fantastic. And when I play a humbucker-equipped guitar, I really, first and foremost, want that kind of AC/DC rock and roll tone. So let's see how that sounds. I think that they really shine with that mid-gain tone, but I also think they can sound really good in more of a clean setting or even more of a saturated lead setting. So let's kind of cover those two extremes too. Now it has a 3-way position toggle, so the middle position combines both of the humbuckers in parallel. This is a really nice tone. I think it definitely gives you that kind of cleaner, quackier, spankier type feeling. Not a lot of low end or mid range, but definitely very clean and clear and articulate. And it's a really nice kind of contrasty tone with some of that more high gain stuff. Now the neck pickup, now you got to realize I'm coming from a guy that's played a lot of Stratocasters, single coil type guitars in my history. So neck pickup humbuckers typically get woofy and woolly and kind of dark and blech, in my opinion. But this pickup really has impressed me. It's got tightness and focus and clarity, but it still has a lot of warmth and fatness and just kind of that nice round tone that you would expect from more like maybe a Les Paul type guitar, but which is a little bit more cut and bite. And I think it just is a fantastic sounding and feeling pickup to play, especially for more like medium gain, bluesy. I just think it's a fantastic neck pickup. You can definitely crank the gain up and turn the tone control back and get a really nice woman tone. You know, that's flat out onto a plexi. It is fat and rich and warm, and it gets a little saggy, spongy, but in a really good way. Never gets too dark or flubby. I think it's, this has been a neck humbucker that I've really come to enjoy playing. Now, as far as the controls, I mentioned it's got a 3-way switch, neck, middle was both, and then bridge. It's got a master volume. Now, the master volume comes equipped with PRS's treble bleed, and I think that it is a fantastic addition. I love treble bleed circuits. I've got the plexi pegged right now, and if I, you can hear it full on. Even when the gain turns down, it doesn't get dark and woolly again. It still entertains a nice element of brightness, but it's not too bright and it gets harsh. It just sits right in the middle. A well-designed treble bleed, I think, makes a big difference. It has a nice tone control. The tone control also pulls up, push-pull, for a coil split. And I actually think the coil split on this guitar is fantastic. PRS does their coil splits a little bit differently. Typically, you have these two pickups in a humbucker. They're wired in series. So they basically, the output goes one into the other, and they kind of multiply each other 1-to-1. With a regular coil split, you just take one of the coils and you shunt it to ground. So you're basically just operating with one of the coils instead of two. Most kind of PAFE style humbuckers are somewhere between 7 and maybe 9K of DC resistance. Now there's a lot more variables to pickups than just DC resistance, but if you take, for example, an Alnico 5 magnet with 42 gauge wire, and you've got 8K of DC resistance, and all of a sudden you shunt one of those coils to ground, now you're looking at like 4K DC resistance. If you know anything about single coils, like a Stratocaster or Telecaster, those pickups are often in like the 5 to 7K range. So 4K is really low. And usually my experience with a traditional coil split mimics that, where the single coil mode gets overly thin and just loses any kind of girth or thickness at all. It just is way too thin and low output. It doesn't have any guts to it, and just a tone that I don't really love. With the PRS mod, they actually put a resistor. So instead of shunting one of the coils to ground completely, there's a little bit of resistance. So that means that it's like a partial coil split. So you're still getting some of that coil to bleed through and give it just a little bit more of that, a little more bottom end, a little more push, a little more body, and it doesn't get quite as thinned out. So let's go back to that kind of raging humbucker neck pickup. Now, does that sound exactly like a Strat into a Super Reverb? No, it's a PRS into a Marshall, but it's a pretty darn cool tone. And really, I think all of this together creates a really simple and easy to use, but also very versatile and flexible control setup. Everything is balanced really well. All of the tones are really usable. Between the coil split and the volume cut, you can take this guitar into a pretty raging amp like I had now and go all the way from clean to dirty and get a wide range from fat to bright to lead tones to rhythm tones and everything in between. And I just think that this simple yet effective layout is one that I really enjoy playing. Okay, let's talk a little bit about feel and playability. In my opinion, this is where PRS has really kind of put their stake in the ground that this is what we do better than anybody else, and that is make guitars that feel really good and play excellently, consistently. And this guitar is it just affirms that opinion. It is no exception. I actually bought this guitar secondhand even, and when I got it, it played perfectly. The neck is straight and flat and is set up well. The nut was cut perfectly. The action is low, but not too low. It still rings out really well. The saddles were well, even intonated pretty well. This whole bridge assembly here is very solid. The locking tuners are rock solid. They're super easy to use. They have good feel and accuracy. I mean, just everything about this guitar screams solid and playable and easy and comfortable. It just is a fantastic feeling and playing guitar. PRS do that really, really well, and this nails it. And one of the most important things to me is the feel of the neck. That is where I put my hand and where I really interact with the guitar the most. This has the pattern regular neck, which kind of feels a little bit to me like what they used to call like their wide thin. I would say this kind of is a little bit along the lines of like the modern C that you might see on some Fender guitars. It is a very comfortable feeling and playing neck. I think that neck comfort is a very subjective and personal opinion, so it's comfortable to me, may or may not be comfortable to you. I really love thick baseball bat necks. This is not one of those, and actually that's probably one of the things about this guitar that I don't really love. I wish the neck profile were bigger. I would prefer having more of PRS's old wide fat neck, or even maybe something even if bigger if they would make it. Like I said, I love 1-inch thick baseball bat necks. This isn't it, but I think for a majority of guitar players, it's going to be really easy to use. And even for me, somebody that has grown very accustomed to those types of necks, it was very easy to acclimate to this just because it was set up to play so well. All the little details, like the edges of the fretboard, and there's no sharp edges whatsoever with these fret ends. I mean, everything about this was just so easy to sit down and play that I found it a great experience, even if it really wasn't my first choice for a neck carve. Now, the finish on this guitar is antique white. This is the S2 standard model, so it does kind of have a glossy finish. Now, I believe that they finished these guitars in nitro, but I could be wrong. But even the neck is finished in that white paint. I have actually found the paint on this guitar feels quite nice. It's not quite as fragile as more of the vintage or the DIY nitro stuff that I've done. It's definitely a little more durable than that, but it also doesn't feel real sticky or glossy. I certainly have had some necks that have that glossy finish that get very sticky and hard to play, especially when it's live and you start sweating a little bit. This guitar has felt really great to play. I haven't had any problems with that. So, the finish on the back of the neck certainly is not a satin. It's definitely painted and glossy, but still feels really good to play. So I didn't have any problems with that. Now, talk a little bit about looks. Now, this is probably where the S2 lineup really differentiates and falls short compared to the core models and maybe even some of the SE models. Because these are made in America, they have to cut corners somewhere in order to keep the price down. And really where they do that is with the overall look and aesthetic of the guitar. So, this is just kind of painted in a very generic antique white. It's a pretty white color. It's got a little bit of a yellowing or an amber or a vintage type tint to it with a very run-of-the-mill black 3-ply pickguard. Certainly a fine choice, but not, this is not in line with their kind of typical PRS with the flamey tops that are going to kind of wow some people. I don't know if this guitar is going to wow anybody, but it's more of a workhorse guitar, which I actually appreciate because some of the PRS, like exotic wood tops and the crazy finishes and the stains and all that, actually kind of feel a little bit maybe gaudy or showy at times. This certainly is simple and straightforward, no frills, no fussing around, just a really solid looking playing guitar. I do also want to comment a little bit though about the body shape. It has the classic PRS double cut shape, which I love. It's one of my favorite shapes to look at. You've got the nice cutaway here for easy high fret access, just very silky smooth. I think the PRS body shape is one of the best looking body shapes ever made. However, the carve of the top is, they've got a little bit of a tummy relief here, and then all the way around the edge, they've got a little bit of like a shoulder or like a gradient almost. And then the rest of the top, kind of from here to the inside, is all completely flat. And compared to the core models, that's a big point of differentiation. The core models have a very gradual and sleeker carving to the top, whereas this definitely looks like it was made by a machine, more of a mass-produced type feel, whereas the PRS core models, in my opinion, kind of give it more of that, like, this is a premium body. This was shaped very intentionally to be very premium feeling. It's sleek, it's sexy, whereas, this definitely kind of gives it a little more of that mass production feel. I wasn't really sure how I would think about that. When you look at pictures, you can't really tell. But when you actually hold the guitar and play it, it becomes pretty obvious to me. And maybe this is just a little bit of my own opinion, but this was kind of off-putting for me. I just feel like that the decor being carved the way it is was a little detail that really makes those high-end PRS guitars separate themselves. Some of the other things like the playability, there's no difference in playability. The improvements they've made in tone, I think these guitars sound fantastic, and I don't think the core models have anything on them. Tuning stability, setup, there's nothing. But in terms of look and feel, giving me that kind of PRS experience that I want, I think the S2 model kind of lacks a little bit. I think it's also interesting compared to the SE models. Because the SE models are made overseas, they can usually sometimes have some of the more flamey tops. Now, they also usually tend to have more of this flat, easier, mass-produced construction feel as well. So, the SE models maybe get away with having a blingier or flashier finish with some of the flamey tops, but they also have that same kind of carve feeling. So, depending on how important that is to you, that may be a big deal. It may not be a big deal at all. For me, I did find that it was something that I have noticed and is kind of one of the other bigger negatives about the guitar. So let's give some more thoughts on the SE versus S2 versus core models and how they all fit together. Now, this guitar I bought used on the secondhand market. It was kind of in like the $800 to $900 range. I think for that price, this guitar is amazing and really, really competes well in terms of value for dollar with anything else in the marketplace. Getting something that was made in the United States with a very, very high level of of tone, of feel, of setup. I mean, you're getting, this is an instrument that you could gig for life and not lack for anything. For $800-900, that's fantastic. The SE models are interesting because they have maybe even a little bit of a better value proposition. Some of the used ones dip down to like the $400 or $500 range. Some of the newer ones maybe start where this one is. So if getting a new guitar is important to you, then these are going to be probably double that, more in like the $1,500 to $2,000 range, I think. The SE line I think really nails it. Is if you're going to try to save and be focused on your budget, if you have limitations, then I think the SE lineup presents some really interesting upside because it's even a little bit more affordable, yet still has some of the super high-end playability. Maybe it's going to lack a little bit in terms of pickups, but I mean, it still is a PRS in the same way this is a PRS. So if you're gonna make a concession, maybe you should just go all the way down to the SE and really max that out. Now this really sits in the middle, and so for me, when comparing this, if I think about the neck shape, the carve of the body, and just the simple fact that it's not a core PRS. Now, this is just kind of the elephant in the room. Like, to what extent is it worth it if it's being like the core PRS? And some of this is just kind of the nostalgia. When I was growing up playing guitar and in college, PRS was one of the only companies on the really high end that people knew about that was providing that kind of elite experience. And I looked at those guitars and thought, these things are fantastic. I mean, these are the top of the line. And I couldn't afford them. I was on a student budget. It was way out of my league. So maybe some of this is always me kind of going back to my roots and thinking, maybe now as an adult, I can shoot for a core level PRS and it can give me all those things with none of the concessions. You're not giving up anything. Now with this, you do get partway there with a lot of those things that I mentioned. I mean, I've raved highly about a lot of the parts of this guitar, but the fact that it is a PRS with still some concessions kind of is a little bit of an oxymoron in my mind. So ultimately, I love this guitar. I do think that the shape of the neck and the shaping of the body and just the mental, not knowing that it's not a core PRS, those things are probably going to be deal breakers for me. And I am going to be probably looking at the used market to see if I can find probably an older American-made PRS that maybe bumps up more into that like $1,500 to $2,000 range to see if maybe I can swing it. The new models are getting really expensive, pushing $4,000 or $5,000. At that point, then it really is kind of difficult to obtain. But at the end of the day, though, is there a big difference between this and some of those other American PRSs I've owned in the past or that I've played at stores? There really isn't. In terms of tone, playability, feel, I mean, this thing is right up there just with those subtle differences, right? The carving of the top, having something a little bit flamier or more traditional PRS. I mean, that's really about it. And so, for a lot of people, I think this guitar is really a home run. Honestly, I think all three of the SE, the S2, and the Core models, they're all fantastic. And so, depending on your budget, depending on your priorities, I could see you making a really good argument for any of those. So, hope you enjoyed my thoughts and opinions. That's where I'm going to conclude it here. This guitar is fantastic. I don't know if it checks all the boxes for me and what I'm looking for, but I'm really glad that I had a chance to own it and play it, and it has served me really well for these several months. Hope you found this enjoyable. Let me know your thoughts and comments down below. See you later. Bye.